The Yellowstone National Park is tightening the rules around fishing right now. The park says high air and water temperatures are causing lethal conditions for the trout. They say in recent days, peak water temperatures hit 86 degrees, fueling reports of dead fish.
What if the most famous trout water in America suddenly became too dangerous for trout to survive in? And what if the very thing tourists travel thousands of miles to do inside Yellowstone National Park was just declared off limits, not because of bears, not because of geysers, but because of the water itself? Right now, 3 major rivers inside Yellowstone have been completely shut down to fishing. Not restricted, not limited to certain hours. Fully closed, day and night, with no end date in sight. The reason is heat. And the numbers behind this closure are more extreme than most people realize. Before we get into it, let's be clear about something. This isn't a rumor, and it isn't one blog exaggerating a local story. This comes directly from the National Park Service, confirmed by their official press release, and independently reported by Wyoming Public Radio and the Daily Montanan. When that many independent outlets, plus the federal agency itself, are all reporting the same details, you know this is the real story, not clickbait. Here's what makes this genuinely alarming. Just 1 week before the full closure, Yellowstone had only imposed a partial restriction on these rivers. Anglers could still fish in the morning hours. Then, in the space of about 6 days, conditions got so much worse that the Park Service had to escalate from a partial limit to a total ban. That kind of rapid escalation tells you something about how fast this heat wave moved through the region. And it raises a bigger question we'll come back to at the end of this video. Is this just a one-off summer event, or a sign of something bigger happening across rivers throughout the American West? Stick with me, because we're going to walk through exactly which rivers are affected, why the water itself has become lethal to fish, what park rangers are asking visitors to do right now, and why this closure comes at a uniquely ironic moment in Yellowstone's fishing season. The announcement on July 15th, 2026. Yellowstone National Park officials announced that fishing on 3 of its most iconic rivers would be fully closed. The affected waters are the Firehole River and all of its tributaries, the Madison River and all of its tributaries, and the Gibbon River along with its tributaries downstream of Norris Campground. This wasn't a small technical adjustment. Full closure means no fishing at any hour, on any day, until conditions improve enough for the Park Service to lift the restriction. Why the water itself turned deadly? So what actually happened to the water? According to the National Park Service, peak water temperatures in these rivers had climbed to between 80 and 86 degrees Fahrenheit during the day. Combine that with unusually high air temperatures, and you get a combination the Park Service describes in blunt terms as lethal to trout. And this isn't theoretical. Park staff had already received reports of dead fish in the Firehole River before the closure was announced. That's the detail that turned this from a precautionary measure into an emergency response. To understand why this matters so much, it helps to know a little bit about how trout survive. Trout need cool, clean, well-oxygenated water, ideally below about 68 degrees Fahrenheit. When water heats up, it holds less dissolved oxygen. Add in low river flows, which Yellowstone was also experiencing, and you get water that is simultaneously hotter and less able to support fish life. For a fish already stressed by heat, that drop in oxygen can be the difference between survival and death, especially for any trout caught and released by anglers. An escalation not a surprise. Here's where the timeline gets interesting. This full closure did not come out of nowhere. Just 6 days earlier, on July 9th, 2026, the Park Service had already taken a first step, closing these same 3 rivers daily from 2 p.m. until sunrise the following day. That kind of restriction is sometimes called a hoot owl closure, and it's a common tool used to protect fish during the hottest part of the day while still allowing some fishing in cooler morning hours. At that point, water temperatures had already exceeded 68 degrees Fahrenheit, with air temperatures forecast to reach around 90 degrees Fahrenheit. But conditions kept worsening. Within less than a week, the situation had deteriorated enough that a partial daily closure was no longer sufficient, and officials moved to a full 24-hour ban. This progression matters because it shows this wasn't an overreaction. It was a step-by-step response to a rapidly worsening environmental reality. The bigger regional picture, this heat event wasn't isolated to Yellowstone's boundaries either. Around the same time, Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks separately imposed similar hoot owl and full closures on the Madison River outside the park. When two separate agencies, managing two separate stretches of the same watershed, both reach for the same emergency measure in the same window of time, it signals a genuinely regional heat event, not just a localized problem inside park boundaries. The ironic timing here's a detail that adds a layer of irony to this whole story. Earlier this year, Yellowstone had actually extended the fishing season on these same three rivers, opening them for fishing weeks earlier than usual, around May 1st. The stated reason was to give anglers a longer window of what the Park Service called more optimal angling and water conditions. In other words, officials opened the season early specifically to give people better fishing conditions. And now, just a few months later, extreme heat is cutting that same season short. A decision made to expand access to these rivers is now being undercut by the very conditions it was designed to take advantage of. Who this affects isn't a niche inconvenience either. Roughly 50,000 visitors fish inside Yellowstone National Park every year. That's a significant number of people whose plans, whether a long-anticipated trip or a simple afternoon outing, are directly affected by this closure. And it's worth remembering that Yellowstone's fisheries aren't just recreational assets. Native species like the cutthroat trout are protected, and possessing these native fish is illegal, underscoring how seriously the park manages this ecosystem even outside of emergency closures like this one. What officials are asking anglers to do even on the rivers, lakes, and streams that remain open, the Park Service is asking anglers to change their behavior to help protect fish that are already under heat stress. Their guidance includes fishing during the coolest parts of the day, landing hooked fish as quickly as possible rather than letting them tire out, keeping fish gently in the water as much as possible when handling them, and allowing fish time to recover fully before releasing them back into the river. It's a simple set of instructions, but it reflects something important even where fishing is still technically allowed. The underlying stress on these fish populations hasn't gone away. What remains open for now, Yellowstone Lake and the park's other lakes remain open to fishing from sunrise to sunset, following the 2026 fishing regulations. All other rivers and streams not specifically named in the closure list also remain open, but the Park Service has been clear that this could change. Staff are continuing to monitor water temperatures daily, and depending on how conditions evolve, restrictions could either be lifted if the weather cools, or expanded further if the heat continues. So here's where things stand. 3 of Yellowstone's most iconic rivers, the Firehole, the Madison, and the Gibbon, are now completely closed to fishing, an escalation from a partial restriction imposed just about a week earlier. The cause isn't a policy decision or a bureaucratic technicality. It's water hot enough to kill the fish living in it, confirmed by actual reports of dead trout in the Firehole River. Park officials are watching conditions closely, and this closure could lift with cooler weather or expand if the heat continues into the coming weeks. So here's the question worth sitting with. If a heat wave can turn one of the most protected, closely monitored ecosystems in the entire country into a place where fish are dying in real time. What does that tell us about the rivers that don't have a National Park Service watching over them? If you found this story as unsettling as we did, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want more stories like this one, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss an update.